most people, when you set up those expectations, are going to be they're reasonable about it, and they're fine with it. Why? Because you told them about it. I always say, just set up when it comes to a sale, it's when, why, who, and then the expectations about when those returns are coming in. And I think, you've done your job if you've provided that information, and then update them.
This is the real estate investing experience. We get it. Real estate can be rough sometimes, and that's why we bring in the experts to talk about the experiences you won't hear anywhere else. With your hosts, John Cohen and Chris Grinzik.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Experience. I'm your host, Chris Grinzik, and with me as always is John Cohen. John, how are we doing?
We're doing good. I got no complaints. Wrapping up the end of the year. So,
Went to the IMN conference yesterday. How was that?
It was good. It was great. It was, it's same, usual suspects. It was, it's getting worse.
There you go.
It was better than the prior 2 years, but not as good as the first.
Mm-hmm. The first being when?
4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
4 years ago for this one. But, you know that it's bad when, I've been doing this for, 6-7 years. And when on my panel, I had the most experience, and that's scary when you're looking.
It's either a good thing or a bad thing.
Correct. You're looking around.
Means we're doing something right, or
doing something really wrong.
Yeah.
But no, it was fun. I mean, it's good to get down there, see the same faces, bump into some people, and
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll jump right back into it. Got an awesome guest on. She did one of our meetups not too long ago. Did an awesome job. So happy to have her on the podcast. Had one of her partners on. We didn't have Chris on.
Yes,
yet.
We had Sonia on earlier.
Yep,
Chris has been slow to clicking the link. Although I do owe him a call. He called me about an hour ago.
Yeah. But without going too much further into it, Krista, you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, how are you? I am Krista Testani, and I am from Sharpline Equity, partner of Chris Jackson, who's slow to click on that link, but he calls you, I know, like 10 times a week. I know that much, right?
Yeah, he needs he's like, I have a gut check. Would you do this deal? I'm like,
yes.
Why not?
And he always calls me. He's like, all right, I did my gut check with John. So I know how many times a week he calls you. But yeah, so I'm Krista Testani, and I'm the second half of, I'll say the first half of Sharpline Equity.
There you go. Better half.
Yeah, the better half. There you go. That's what I was looking for.
There you go. So can you just very quickly, wherever you want to start, wherever you want to end, just tell people a little bit more about you, how you got into real estate, kind of your journey and what you're doing today?
Sure. Yes, sure. So I am a attorney by trade, but I call myself a disgruntled attorney because I never liked practicing, but I did it for a while. I did it for about 10 years. And then walked away from that industry cold turkey in about 2007 and kind of floundered, not sure what I wanted to do. And it was really my husband who suggested that we get into real estate. Jumped into that in 2009, and I started out by flipping houses on Long Island. And then 2011, I decided to get educated. I wanted to scale and didn't really feel like flipping singles was a way that I could do it. Not that people are not out there doing that, but I just couldn't figure out how to scale that. And I ended up finding an educational platform here on Long Island, which is where I'm from. And that platform was a year-long education program, and it taught me about multifamily real estate. So joined that in 2011. John, is that eventually how we met?
That's how we connected more or less.
Yeah, that's how I've connected, and that's how I connected with my partner as well, Chris, through the networking of students in that thing. So that was awesome. Great things came out of that. And then I started out syndicating immediately and syndicated my first deal in, surprise, surprise, Cincinnati, Ohio. In 2013, I had that 20 unit, and then I moved into Chattanooga, Tennessee with a 36 unit. I've concentrated mostly at this point in Georgia, Atlanta. We had a 48 unit, a 56 unit, We now have 174 unit and 100 unit in Augusta. And I've also gone full cycle. I've purchased and sold 4 buildings at this point. So I've done, the whole gambit at this point.
Awesome. So
Yeah.
I think that early on, if we could talk about it a little bit, going from single family to multifamily, I know that there's a lot of people that, even more so today, I think, this will go into the next part of the conversation, which I really want to get to because I know Chris is phenomenal at this. But when you started flipping, it seems like today, and even at the panel and yesterday down there, it seems like multifamily syndication is now the new flip, where everybody's doing it. Everybody wants to do it. But when you made the switch, for everyone knows the scalability, right? That's what's being sold to the world, and that's why people make the switch. But what were the challenges on flipping houses that where you inevitably saw the scalability on multifamily being better? But I know what was the initial reaction, saying maybe this isn't for us, or maybe it's going to work, or maybe it won't work, or I don't even like it anymore. What was that initial feeling or thought?
It was a combination of things that were happening in the market that I was in. So I started out in 2009, so right after the crash, and there was a huge influx in the pipeline of distressed assets on Long Island. So there was a ton of inventory, right? And there was just so many out there, and not as many people were doing it, so there wasn't that much competition. Then the market started getting tight because more and more companies jumped on board to do flips and buy up those distressed assets. And so it got more competitive, but also the scalability part is what hit me in the head, because we were doing it with our own money. So, how many houses can you do at the same time with your own money? I mean, we partnered up with some people, so we had maybe 3 going at the same time, but we were tapped out after that point. So that's where I said, regardless of the fact that it's getting more competitive and we were having a harder time finding a good deal, I just couldn't figure out how to get investors interested in the one house at a time flip model. And then, it didn't help that the last 3 deals that we did were tanked. I mean, we, lost money on the last 3 deals. So that doesn't help, because then how trying to figure out how do you...
that's a tough one. It's like, whoops, we messed up again.
We messed up for
by the way, you want to do another one with us?
Yeah. So by the way, investors, would you like to invest with us? It was just, so yeah. I mean, so it was a combination of what was going on in the market and not really being able, and we were doing it, by ourselves. By the way, I didn't take any educational courses or classes on flipping houses. And I didn't even really know what's funny is I didn't know anything about syndication at all when I decided to go into multifamily. I just knew that I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. I just knew that single family flips was not the path for me to travel. And, multifamily was something that sounded interesting, but I certainly didn't know all the ins and outs of it until I jumped in and started that educational program. And I really didn't even know about the word syndication. I mean, just like you're saying, John, now everyone's talking about it. Everybody wants to do it or has feedback or is doing it. But back, I feel like, I don't know when you joined that program, but I don't feel like I joined that long ago, 2011, right? I feel like it is so different now.
It's crazy.
I mean, it's crazy different now.
Even I was coming out of, most people know I was a broker, so I had the multifamily background. I looked at it as a community, and I say this all the time, I looked at it as like a country club. Okay, there's like-minded people here that I could brainstorm with instead of talking to, one of my friends who, delivers Chinese food or someone that I could speak to them and, they're like, wow, you're a commercial broker. You must be making millions of dollars. I'm like, no, doesn't work that way. But I know even when I joined and said, okay, there's really good people here, I really like it. One, it was in our backyard, so that's super important to me. Right. And then it was from that period, the next year, doubled or tripled in size, and 5 other people started coaching programs. And next thing you know, I was like, I don't even like the word syndication. I try and avoid it. People say, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm a real estate investor. I buy a couple, multifamily properties. Because it almost has a negative word now. And I think what separates some from others and better syndicators or better sponsors is, I don't want to say the transparency, but that could be one part of it. But there's so many people doing it. And there's so many people that are going to make so many mistakes because everybody thinks they can do it. Not unsimilar to Krista's last 3 houses. There's so much that can go wrong. And I think it's how you address those issues with investors. It's what separates some people. So I know something that you do really well. We did a deal together in Alabama, and we sort of got thrown into the fire. It wasn't even supposed to be like that, but we sort of got pushed in different capacity. But once I knew Krista was involved, I had a lot more confidence in, being involved in, helping them out. But can you talk about why, you've been doing it for a long time. You're seasoned. You've had a ton of experience. What are some reasons that make you or separate you from the guy that just picked up a book yesterday and he put an offer on a 500 unit in a tertiary market that, most likely won't work?
Right. Not only that guy, but how about the companies out there now that are just raising money for deals?
Oh yeah.
Not looking for the deals, not operating the deals. They're just out there as money raisers, bringing investors into deals and then stepping out. Like that to me that's actually the super crazy part that I'm finding, that there's just money raisers out there and that's all they do. That's all they wanted to do. And I'm not judging at all. I'm not trying to say that, but it's just lends to this idea of like, it's frantic out there now with people raising money from investors. And I think it is an opportunity for people like us who are doing it all, looking for the deals, underwriting the deals, operating the deals, and then raising money, to separate ourselves from this crew of money raisers. Because what I think a lot of, and from the person that's just going out there, not getting educated at all, like you said, jumping in, buying an apartment building, raising money from maybe just friends and family and kind of winging it, which is not a good way to get into this business and start out in this business. I think people like us can really separate ourselves out from this crowd, because what I think a lot of groups are not concentrating on is the client experience. I think everybody is concentrating on hitting their targets and giving back the returns that they're projecting. And of course, obviously, that's a huge part of what we're doing here, is we're projecting our returns for our investors, and hopefully we hit those marks. However, that is one piece of our job. And I think most people are only concentrating on that, and they're forgetting that the client experience is super important. There's an experience from A to Z, and people are just concentrating on one of those letters. They're not concentrating on the whole alphabet. And when this really was, now I think intuitively I've been doing it right, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn. It's just that I think people with any sense of integrity and responsibility towards their investors are probably intuitively going to make the right moves and do the right thing. But it became clear to me that this is so important. When I spoke to someone whom I think but I will mention no names on here, but this was a very interesting conversation. We were both, because I invest passively, like we all have money that we want to work for ourselves. So I'm out there investing in colleagues' deals. And me and someone else that I knew were invested in the same deal, and it did well. It was it ended up, it was a 5 to 7 year hold. The operator sold in the 3rd year. I got back like 98% in returns, so I'm averaging over 30% a year. I mean, it was a good deal. And so I was talking to this colleague of mine that was also invested in the deal, and she was furious at the end of this experience, right? And I'm like, did you not get the same return as me? And she's like, no, I got the same return, but Krista, like, what was the deal with this? He hardly reported. We knew nothing that was going on. We knew nothing of the motivation for the sale. And as she started talking about this, I realized, you know what? In 3 years, I think there was one webinar. He did no annual reporting. We had no idea of the sale. We got a cover letter and our check at the end of the deal. Like, we knew nothing. And so I realized, like, oh wow, she's right. And then she said something that was, also really landed on me. She goes, it's great that he did great for us and got us our returns, but imagine if the deal went sideways. If he wasn't reporting to us when things were going well, I can't even imagine what the experience would have been like if things went sideways, So it made me realize that, yeah, clients, obviously, we're all investing in the hopes of getting good returns, but there's more to it than that. And I started focusing really and setting up systems within my company. I started focusing on, like, what are the things that we need to do from the moment we are proposing a deal to a potential client, through the time that they're signing on to the deal, through the hold, through the sale. What are the things we need to put in place so that they overall have a really good experience?
So that's something, we work on that more so now than we ever did, because you got, if you're bringing in third-party management and you're buying deals, you have to do something a little bit different. And it's under my own admission, we don't do nearly as good a job as maybe the vision in my head is, and it's something that we work on. Right. But is there any, the systems that you've put in place, they're working really well. Your investors are happy, hopefully. I know that they are. But are there any, like, what are the, the secret sauce, or what are you doing? Is there any system or any platform, or is it just, we know, we're setting up quarterly webinars the day we buy? Or what are the little things that you do that I think any listener would want to know? Because if someone's looking to get into this, or someone's looking to, or maybe someone's syndicating and not doing a good job with it, but what are the, 5 things or the most important thing that you can do? Relaying good and bad information is, clear as the night is day, and, whatever. But what things do you think are, super important and what you hang your hat on?
Yeah. So, we just kind of worked this out recently within our company, and we talked about the 3 stages of experiences that the client's going through. Again, it's when you're presenting the deal, it's during the hold and sale. And so it's like, what do we need to do to manage their experiences so they're good? So, when we focus on those 3 stages, I'll start with stage 1, when you're proposing the deal to someone, what is going to make their experience good versus bad? And it has to do with the presentation of your paperwork, the quality, how many times you ping them with your paperwork. Like, the idea of making everything really easy for the client, I think, is important. You don't want to annoy them with sloppy paperwork, or when they agree to sign. Like, quality of paperwork and quality of your presentation should be just a no-brainer, right? But how about when they're ready to invest? You guys know, and if they're an IRA investor, even more of the slew of paperwork that is involved, right? Mm-hmm. Are you approaching your client multiple times? Hey, sign this, and then going back to them, hey, sign that, sign this, or are you lining up all your docs, packaging up your documents? Lining up all your ducks, packaging up your documents so they're only signing once? Are you being sensitive to their privacy issues? Are you shooting out emails to them and asking them to sign documents and sending it back via email when they're providing banking and their social security? Or are you being very proactive from the get-go in today's world and making sure all of your communication is over a secured network? I mean, some people don't think of that step. And as an investor, if someone's asking for me for my social security number over email, I'm already questioning their credibility and the quality of the services I'm going to get from. Think of this as you are providing a product and you're providing services. I mean, I think that's the mode people have to get into now when it comes to this, that this opportunity is a product and you are servicing your client. So it's about, the ease of paperwork and managing their paperwork when they sign on, I think, is really, really important. And getting that system in place. We started out when we were small, we were like visiting people and just having them sign the documents in front of us. Now that, our investors are all over the country, we made the decision, are we doing FedEx mail, or are we doing something online that makes it really simple for them? Figure out your system, get systemized, and get your system nailed down to the point where it's the most convenient and the least painful for the client, right? Because it can become overwhelming, especially for first-time investors, with the amount of paperwork that they have to read and sign. So
Absolutely.
you want to make that process as easy as possible.
So I agree. I think streamlining the onboarding is super important. I mean, we are still trying different things to seeing how we can do it, and then, we battle the some of our investors are a little bit older, some of them are younger. The younger people with the technology, super easy. Then some of the older, they don't want to mold to the technology. So I think understanding your investor base and streamlining that process, I know we take over, we tell people it's soup to, we'll do everything, whether it's IRA, regular documents, checks, ACH, whatever you want, we're going to put a pretty package together, and all you're going to have to do is either click a couple buttons, all secured, or, we'll print out the documents, come into our office, whatever it is. So I think streamlining that process is super important, because I think the other thing, closing a deal sometimes is a fire drill. Actually, it's always a fire drill. And, we're missing this document. Where's that? And I think having that system down pat, so if someone needs something, it's a quick, here you go, is super important. Because I know no matter how planned out a closing is, it feels like that day, nothing goes the way it's supposed to, and it's a fire drill. So if you have to add the element of 20 investors or 15 investors or 40 investors, whatever it is, it's only going to, it's that much more headache. So obviously streamlining the process is super important. What else? Is there a platform that you use, or is it more just, hey, it's internal, we check it with, we have our own checks and balances?
Right now, it's internal, although we want to get even more systemized. So, right now, we have graduated to the point where we're doing online boarding with, DocuSign or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but we're looking into platforms where we can create, the portal, right? We eventually want the portal where clients can actually just log in and have their, files all accessible to them. So it's a journey, you start out doing one thing, and then you grow and you figure out which systems work for you. And we're on this journey. Partnering up with Chris Jackson has been huge for me, obviously, because he's like the tech part of my business, and, he's figuring out those pieces. And so we're a work in progress. But we're constantly looking for the better client experience, and setting ourselves apart from those people that aren't concentrating on this piece at all. So that's important. The hold is like the second stage, and learning just from that conversation. Actually, I'm going to dial it back for 1 second and just say something. I'm just throwing this out there because I just experienced it. When you are dealing with IRAs, my forewarning to people out there that are dealing with clients who have IRAs is reach out to the custodians and find out, and you may be dealing with more than one custodial company. Really have them review your paperwork and chime in and give feedback. I went through an entire process of getting people signing our operating agreements. We had 30-something investors in a deal. Just like you said, you're under the gun. You got to get all this done by the close date. And the IRA that I was dealing with kicked them all back. There was 20 IRA investors, and kicked them all back because they didn't like the signature block. They didn't like the signature block. And I had to redo all of that paperwork. And what did I have to do? I had to ping my investors a second time and say, can you re-sign? Not a good client experience for them, right? They are luckily people that have, they're with me now for 5 or 6 deals. So it wasn't horrible. Not great if they were all first-time investors, I mean, I have their trust at this point, and so they were patient. But I'm just throwing that out there, guys, get that all worked out before you have anyone sign any documents, because the custodians have a lot of say in how they want their documents to look. So, okay, moving on to the stage where it's during the hold stage. Okay, the two major things, and John, you already hit upon it: frequency of reporting and transparency. We started out with quarterly webinars. Now it's a monthly newsletter in addition to a quarterly webinar, in addition to always doing a paper year, end of year summary. So we're always, so it's like 3 different type of platforms that we are sending information to, because we know there are some people that will never open up their emails for that monthly newsletter, but they may get on a webinar. So we're doing the quarterly webinars. There's some investors that are never going to do neither. They won't do either one of those things, but they will open up the mail and see the summary report at the end of the year. So we actually did that on purpose. So we have, because you do have, you know, like you said, the older investors are not getting on the computer and listening to webinars, but they're the ones that are opening up their mail. So we made sure that we sent out reporting in 3 different formats, and frequency is important, because we want people to feel, listen, if they never open up their email, if they never jump on a webinar or don't like look back for the recording, that's not on me, but at least it's available to them and they know it's available to them. And the most important thing is making sure that they have that sense that they're in the loop of what's going on, good or bad, right? I mean, and you know, word of caution, guys, don't be out there just talking about the good and never talk about the bad. People aren't stupid. They know that, you know, in the real world, things are going to go wrong, and it's more about how are you addressing what's going wrong. That's what's important to investors, not that you hide what's going wrong. They won't appreciate that when they eventually find out the bad. So frequency of reporting and transparency is, to me, the number one, you know, the number one thing that you need to concentrate on. And, you know, one thing that comes in mind that I was kind of shocked at, and again, this is how you set yourself apart from all these people out there doing it. It's actually better that I can't remember who it was, because I don't want to slip and ever reveal a name. But there's someone out there very active in the Facebook groups that has a substantial multifamily business. And he got on Facebook at the end of the last year tax reporting period and was complaining about his clients who, I guess it was the first time he had a sale. And so his IRA clients were dealing with the consequence of UBITs, right? Now, none of us are tax experts, obviously, and you shouldn't be advising people too much, always telling people to consult with their own accountants, but you know, you try to give them as much high-level guidance as you can. And he put out there on Facebook for his clients to read, like, people, you know, I'm here, I'm providing an opportunity and an investment. You need to stop pinging me with your questions about UBITs and go speak to your accountant. And I was like, wow, really? Like, it's client services. Like, no, you're not a tax expert and you probably can't answer all of their questions, but you could give guidance. You should know enough about UBITs to be answering some high-level questions. Oh, and by the way, if you were really doing your job, these people shouldn't have been surprised by UBITs. They should have known going in there's such a thing as a UBITs tax consequence. You know what I mean? They shouldn't be finding out for the first time when you sold the deal. So, you know, there's someone that I don't think was doing their job from inception. But it blew my mind that someone was that way with their clients. Like, do you care about repeat? That's someone. He was hanging his hat on the fact that he did a good job and those people got good returns. And that's what he was hanging his hat on. Like, they're all going to come back to me because of that. And you know what? I wouldn't hang my hat on that, because there's so many people out there doing this. You can find other good operators to invest your deals. You know,
absolutely.
Your deals.
You know, 100% return is great, but, you know, give me a 15 or a 12 and let me know what's going on and make sure there's no problems. I mean, the deal that we sold, that we did together, there was a cluster fuck UBIT problem. Yep. And it was brutal. And I was not in the day-to-day, so I didn't have any of the support. And a lot of those investors came out of that deal and put 100% of their profit into one of my deals. So we were issuing the UBIT tax, and some of these investors, we had an investor that basically emailed me and said, my entire return is gone. Now, the accountants made a mistake, which they fixed, but I had to answer so many questions from 5 investors that the sponsor didn't do. They didn't even know about it. And it wasn't, be that as it may, and that's fine. It happens. But I was picking up the pieces for so many problems that one of the investors didn't have the money, that I literally had to forward the tax payment. And then when the deal sells, we'll get it credited back. But luckily we had excess cash in the account. All the investors were okay with it. And I said, hey, here you go. So you could pay your taxes. But it was a major disaster. And that was because no one understood it. And then you add that with accountants making a brutal mistake. That didn't help the situation. But to not be aware of that as a sponsor, and that, that's, and hang your hat on 100% return or a 90% return, a return's not going to make it all go away, because there's something to be said about, ease of investing, the seamlessness of it, and the headache free. I mean, I'm an investor in a deal that was so piss poor run, and we're selling it we're actually making a really good return on it right now. And it's like disheartening. It's like, wow, whatever, who gives a shit? It's like, okay, we're making a lot of money, but the last 5 years has been brutal. We've made not a penny. We've got no updates. And when we do get an update, there's mistakes. It's just, yeah, we're doing well, but there's no fun in that. It's like, oh yeah, we made some money, but the experience was so brutal.
Right. Are you ever going back and investing with that operator again?
No shot.
Never. No shot. No shot.
So
and the name of the game is you want people to, especially IRA investors, you want people to be rolling over with you over and over and over again. Like, why wouldn't you invest time and energy into their experience so that there's no chance that they would ever consider moving their money to a different operator? Or,
exactly. And what we do, very early on when investors ask us questions, and we have a ton of investor calls daily. I say, listen, our accountants and our lawyers play nice, if you want to get on a call with your accountant, our accountant, and understand this so it's set up properly from day one, let's set up a conference call, because that's why we pay them what we pay them.
Right.
And they do what they do for us, because we want to provide as many resources as we can to our investors, not only from a standpoint of them making an investment, but if they ever go out and do it on their own, or they have another syndication, or they have another investment, they can say, wow, these guys do it really well. Be like that. So I think it is important. And I think that's where, from our own admission, as I said before, the hold is super important. It's very easy as a sponsor that's very active to have a deal that may be going okay, and then you're looking for a new deal and you forget about that one. And I think that nobody, it's very easy to just move on to the next one, but it's how you handle problems that I think also sets you apart. And that hold period, whether it's a monthly newsletter, quarterly updates, whatever it looks like, one thing that we're, trying to put in place next year is, once a month or once a quarter on Fridays, just follow up with everybody. Just let them know what's going on a personal phone call, because people don't do that
that's
anymore.
Great. Yeah,
it's like, I'm gonna create a Facebook group for my investment, and I'm just gonna post pictures on there, and people think that that's okay. That may be okay for your investors if that's what they're comfortable with, but I want that personal relationship. I was just in Atlanta yesterday at the conference, and a week prior to that, I was out on a property tour with one of our investors, and I saw him again last week, and he was just, he's like, I think what you're doing is great. I just, the interface, is great. I don't ever have to ask you a question. When I'm about to ask you a question, it's like, the email comes in or the phone rings, and I think people forget about picking up the phone and calling people. We have a deal that I have yet to send out an update on that we bought a couple months ago, and it's been on my weekly checklist, and I get yelled at in our Monday morning meetings because I haven't done it yet. Yeah. But I've picked up the phone and called all the investors, so the investors know the update. I just haven't got it on paper, and that's my own fault. But picking up the phone is something that I think more.
It's a lost art, right? Nobody talks on the phone anymore.
No, it's easy to send a text. What's going on? Hey, but that picking up the phone is important.
Yeah.
But we got prior to the deal, and I think what could possibly the most important is how you handle the rest of it, because you have taxes and withholdings and holdbacks and accounting, and I'm assuming that's your stage 3.
That's the stage 3. It's about setting up the expectations and, again, transparency. So, we all have projected plans, exit strategies, timelines, and then what actually happens, right? So all my holds are, 5 to 7 or 7 to 10, and then I'm selling in year 2 or 3. That's okay, and there's no problem with that. But, letting your clients in on what's happening, why you're even entertaining offers at this stage. So it's about transparency. When you decide you're selling or the opportunity arises, you talk about the sale. You set up the expectations for returns at the time of the sale. You update your investors when those expectations, or when those numbers change, because they will, based on everything that's going on. You set up expectations about when they're going to get their money. It's like, again, you can't just like sell the property and then they don't hear from you for 90 days. Let them know, guys, you don't get your returns right away. There's a wind down process where we have to figure out the LLC tax consequence. Management, yeah.
Not to cut you off, but
Yeah.
I'm going to take that clip and I'm going to forward it to one of our piece of shit investors that ridiculed me because we sold the property in August. It was at the end of August. And he hasn't got his final payment when I said I have about 400 emails saying there's wind down, there's final bills. Bills come in after a property's sold.
Right.
So I can't just give you all your money and then call you in 30 days, say, oh guys, I'm short $1,000. You're never going to send it back to me. So
right.
like that clip, I'm glad it was said. And then I'm going to get smashed for saying this, but I don't care because, we're not taking money from him anymore because he didn't understand it. And we sent an email at the end of closing saying, expect this, but I promise you before the end of 2019, everything will be wind down. Do you think I want to pay another tax return? Do you think I want to hold your money in perpetuity? But they didn't get it. But
did you return? Because one of the things I would recommend, and you probably did it, is returning the initial their capital investment right away.
We did. We said.
So
$100,000 in the account, and it's like, okay, the investment was 50. Here's 50. Let me just work on this 50. It's not. Then he sent me an email saying the exact email was, I consulted an attorney. This should be done in 30 days. And I said, okay, that's fine. You don't have enough money to take legal action. Not the right attitude. And I hit send on a bunch of emails that I probably am going to regret. But I was like, do you think I want your money? You think I want your money sitting in a bank account doing nothing? It's not like I'm using it for my own pleasure. It was, I got the accountants. I don't know the tax laws in Ohio. I don't know the tax laws in Alabama. Right. That's what they do. So if they're, and I told them, reach out to the accountant, speak to the accountant directly. If you don't believe me, that's your job, not mine. Okay, well then deal with it.
Yeah. No, that's just one very unreasonable and disgruntled client. I think most of your clients, again, when you're setting up the expectations at the time of the sale, saying, okay, this is what we're doing first. The capital will get returns immediately, so you have use of it, or let it sit there to roll over into my next deal or whatever. But and setting up, it takes X amount of days. Again, like you said, LLC taxes, wind down with the management company. Management withholds money. You don't even get all your money from management because they're not letting it go until everything is settled on their end. So most people, when you set up those expectations, are going to be they're reasonable about it and they're fine with it. Why? Because you told them about it. I always say, just set up when it comes to a sale, it's when, why, who, and then the expectations about when those returns are coming in. And I think, you've done your job if you've provided that information, and then update them. And then when they have the questions, and they will inevitably come in on the whole UBITS piece, again, we're there, we're holding their hands. I mean, we're working with our accountants, and we never give advice. It's always with the qualifier. That we're not tax experts, but this is a big piece for people. The tax consequence is a big piece. And, again, I'm still shaking my head at that one operator who had that attitude. These people are going to ask questions. Yes, it's up to you to answer to the best of your ability and help them through that process.
And that's sort of what a big part of your role is as, the guy running the deal or the girl running the deal, or, your job is to relay information and answer as many questions as you can without, we're no tax expert. I'm not a lawyer, but that's part of the responsibility. And when people get fed up with that, which, let's call a spade a spade. We're just talking about investor relations and clients, and I just ripped a guy, but sorry.
But I mean, you were doing the right thing and you told them. I mean, you were transparent about it. I mean, some people, no matter what you do, it's never going to be enough.
No, some people are always going to be happy. They're never going to be satisfied, and that's just life. But
yeah. One of the things that we're even going to the extent, I actually got on a webinar last night. I mean, I'm going the extra mile because I myself am pissed about the new tax laws and the implications to IRA investors. There's some new tax laws coming down, and they start taking effect, I think, in 2020. I have a whole notepad full. The accountants told me about it, but it makes it it's not great what they're doing, and it's making it a little less attractive to use your IRA. Not horrible, but less attractive. And so I'm doing my own research with QRPs now, because I think that's an opportunity. I need to get educated on it. EQRP, I think, is the exact name of it. But I think that may be an opportunity for people to use a different vehicle and get out from under the UBITS thing. But I have to, we have to get educated as a team, and then we'll go out and educate our investors. And that's just, I'm not getting money for that. I'm not doing it for any type of compensation. I'm doing it because, again, I feel like I'm providing a service to investors, and the better educated they are on the product that we're providing, the happier they'll be, the more likely they'll repeat an investment with me. So, that's the length that I'm going to, to set myself apart from the people that don't want to be bothered.
But even the IRA part is a big part, because, I figured out really early on there was a better way to structure deals. You buy a deal all cash, no problem. It's only if you have debt, right? So let's explain UBIT a little bit. For anyone that doesn't know what UBIT is, basically if you have debt on a property, you have to pay a higher tax, the highest corporate tax bracket on the leveraged portion of the return.
Right.
So easy math, if you have 80% leverage on a deal, 80% of your profit is taxed.
Yes.
That's what the government says. So, even understanding that alone makes you probably more equipped than 95% of sponsors out there, because, they see, wow, IRA, just give me your money. Next thing you know, they don't realize it. So there's other ways to get creative to do IRA investing, whether it's through promissory notes or as a debt instrument. There's better things to do, in our opinion, unless you just don't care about the taxes and you look at it as a way to say, okay, well, you know what? I'm paying tax on money I would have never had if I didn't invest.
I mean, and that's because a lot of people want to get into the multifamily deals as an equity investor, and they don't have the liquidity. So IRA is the only way to go.
Yep.
If they want to get into the multifamily deals. So, I think it's a great tool. I just think there may be something better out there. Well, like you said, you can utilize your IRAs for different things besides just, in leveraged real estate. You can be a debt holder, obviously, and we have those. We have a lot of IRA investors that are debt investors with us on our single family portfolio, which I'm not going to discuss at all about. I digress. I don't want to talk about the single family portfolio we have, but I think that there's an opportunity to get educated about this other vehicle, and maybe it will be something that I'm talking to my investors about soon, just because, I want to be ahead of the eight ball, and, things are constantly changing. And one of the things that are constantly changing are tax laws. Now, am I going to become an expert at this? No, but I want to at least know enough to steer people on a particular path, and then let them look into it and get educated. But I just feel like that's part and parcel of what a good sponsor should be doing for their investors.
Exactly. Now,
I think I haven't really chimed in because you guys have been going back and forth a lot, but I think it just boils down to any client relationship. And you started touching on it a lot, Krista. And the third part is just expectations. And part of it is market expectations, where a client in that industry or that's looking for that service, whether it's an investor or you're ordering a product, or you're working with some sort of a service company, you have some sort of expectation in that environment or that industry. So there's some sort of a market expectation, but there's also going to be expectations that you set on the experience you're going to give people. And the better you can communicate that, the better their experience is going to be. Whether you meet it or exceed it, that's how they're going to have the positive experience, whether it's market or expectations you set. So like, we have very different reporting things that we do than you. We don't really do webinars. We don't really do monthly. We just do quarterly and annually and written. And we say, hey, we'll follow up with a phone call, or if you want to jump on a phone call, do it that way. And that's the expectation we set up front. So if there's somebody that wants a monthly email, they have to then communicate that, because our communication was, hey, that's not what we're going to do. So if you're expecting that, tough shit. Like, that's just not what we do. If you want that, either go somewhere else or have a conversation, and we'll either adapt or we'll tell you, no, that's not what we're going to do. And then you decide, okay, is that something I can get over or not? So where you were talking about setting expectations, I think that's the most important part going into it, is how clearly can you define the expectations that they should rightfully have before going into whatever agreement you go into. That's what's going to lead to that positive experience for somebody and the desire to continue to repeat business and come back, whether it's investing or purchasing a product.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, people cannot, once everyone's on the same page, they can't complain, in my opinion.
Mhm.
You know,
Exactly.
if they understand the expectations, you've established it, and you live up to what you're saying, then there's nothing, there's nothing to complain about. And then I think overall they walk away feeling good, not regardless of the returns. See,
Correct.
Here's the thing. Someone can walk away from a deal, or someone could, after you've exited a deal, maybe you did not have stellar 100% returns. I know one of my deals, a lot of things went sideways throughout the deal. A lot of things went sideways, but I was transparent through the entire process, reported consistently on what we were doing, why we were doing it, how we were handling the challenges. So people all along the way knew I was not meeting my target projections. They knew it in year 2 that it was not going to happen. But they knew what I was doing and how I was dealing with the challenges. I think at the end of the day, it was like a 5-year hold, and they ended up at like an annualized of maybe 9.5%. It was considerably less than what I was projecting after sale. Not one person complained, and every single one of those investors have rolled over into other deals that I've had. So they didn't walk away with stellar returns, but the process that I set up, the transparency, the frequency of reporting, every step of the way, they were looped in on it. So notwithstanding the returns, they had a good client experience, and I retained them all as future clients in my other deals. That's,
Right.
That's important.
I'm sure that's the expectation you set up front. It wasn't, hey, we're going to do this deal and this is how it's going to go from a return basis. It was, hey, here's the deal. Here's what I think is going to happen. But I can tell you along the whole way, I'm going to communicate in these ways. I'm going to tell you whether it's good or it's bad. And we're going to continue to operate to the best of my ability, regardless of what it does or doesn't do. I'm not going to promise you, just like I would make sure nobody ever guarantees a return, but I'm not going to promise you a return. But the expectation for an investor should be that it is a somewhat likely scenario, not a guarantee.
Right.
When you go out and buy a product, you should be pretty much guaranteed that what they're giving you is they're giving you. If they're giving you a waterproof phone, it better be fucking waterproof, or you have a right to be upset. Right. Investing is a little bit different. So if you tell somebody,
that's why they have to sign 40 pages of
exactly.
Delineating every possible risk and everything that could possibly go wrong. I'm sure their eyes are glazing over when they read that. But that's why you put pen to paper when it comes to this, because real estate is a risk like any other investment, So.
I had that question the other day. What's the worst thing that can happen? I said, the bank forecloses, we lose 100% of our money, and they personally come after us for the loan because we broke a bad boy clause. And the eyes were like, are you fucking kidding me? And I'm like, you wanted the worst case scenario. I just broke down the worst case scenario. That's it. If someone doesn't give you that answer, they're lying to you, because that is the worst case scenario. Now,
and guys, and it, that particular thing didn't happen, but it happens. People do lose their capital. I did lose on a passive investment 80% of my capital investment. 80%.
And that's not even the worst.
No.
That's not even the worst thing that could happen.
We recently...
It's terrible.
Yeah, we did a fix and flip, which was stupid from day one, and I knew it, but we got greedy because it looked like a great deal. I literally had to give money to the buyer. He was the contractor on the deal, and he could not qualify for a new hard money loan. So not only did we lose the money, I had to write him a check
at sale
so he can go get a new loan.
Yeah,
I had to pay him to get out of my deal, but it happens, and we lost the money.
Yeah, it happens. So that's another thing too, that only now that I've experienced as a passive investor a hit, right? This was an IRA investment that took this big hit. Now that I've experienced it, I am very sensitive now to the concept that capital preservation is like the number one priority, and then anything on top of capital preservation is like icing on the cake. Like seriously, your mind shifts now when something like that happens. Like I remember I was in so this happened to me, okay? And now I was talking to an operator a couple of days ago, and we were talking about this loss that I had. And I was a passive investor in one of his deals, and it was a long time ago, and he apologized to me. It was like a 4-year hold, and it didn't do well. And, things went wrong, and we annualized out at like 5% annual, not right, not great. Okay. And so he brought it up. It's years later now, he brings it up and he's like, oh, I never like apologized to you in person. And I was like, having taken a hit where I lost 80% of my capital, I'm like, I have a different lens now. You know what? Mm-hmm. I was thanking him because it's like, you know what? It was a tough deal. You preserved my capital, and I earned a little bit along the way. I'm happy. You know what I mean? Because
I don't. Not enough.
You know what it is? Because I don't think people realize how hard what we do is not easy. Like it's not easy what we do. It's actually really hard to meet those projections, because there are so many things that can go wrong, and you can only control so much, and you can only predict so much, and you can only forecast so much. So I think, having experienced that, I realized, wow, capital preservation, that's the first thing. And congratulations to the operators that do that. And then the ones that provide a return on top of it, then you can start judging based on that. But, anywho, I don't know. I've kind of digressed and went off on a
no,
tangent,
but I think that's good, because Chris said it, no one emphasizes that right now. The scary part of the market is that, people flip to the back page like, an 18, that's not that good. A 15, that's not that good. 12, are you fucking kidding me? Who's giving a 12? And I'm like, we have a deal, we sold a deal in Charleston, a phenomenal deal. It's out. I mean, great deal. We rolled it into another deal that, if I bought 4 of those and I never did another thing, I'd be the happiest person in the world, because it's the security behind. Now listen, I can go to shit tomorrow, and I know that, but breaking even on a struggling situation and not losing, that's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but you didn't go 2 steps forward and 4 steps back, because you don't want to give someone 100, walk away with 20, put 20 in, and then walk away, have to owe money. That's, right. You give someone 100 and you get 100, you know what? You didn't lose. I mean, you don't have to ever work with that guy again or that girl again. It doesn't matter. But, people, I don't think emphasize enough, how like the security behind a deal. And if it's not showing a 25 on paper, get over it. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to put that on paper. Be happy. You make 12, 15% a year. You should be, smiling from ear to ear, happy as a pig in shit.
I think, I'm so frustrated by that, because I agree with you. Like, because of how the market has been, you can be like half brain dead, and you could have made money in multifamily the last 5, 6, 7 years with how things were going. But now is where really, people are being tested, because it's only the really good operators that are going to do well now, because you're not going in on the same basis anymore. Like I said, the last 5 years you could go in and be a crappy operator, and then you exit out at much higher per door pricing, and everybody wins and everyone. But now it's like, the really good operators are the ones that are going to ride out now this next market that we're going to be living in. And I get so frustrated, because people for so long have been putting out these really high returns on paper. And by the way, what really pisses me off too, now I'm going to go off on a tangent, is some of these operators, you look at go in their portal and you see the deals that they're projecting all of these returns. It's heavy projections based on sale. And by the way, have they sold a deal yet? Yeah. Like, I know an operator that's putting out 18 to 23% on every deal that he has. He's got a lot of them. He has not one proof of concept yet. He has not sold one deal yet. And that pisses me off, because everyone's like, oh, everyone's putting out 18, 20%. I'm like, have they sold the deal yet? Did they really deliver that? Because putting that out on paper is one thing. Delivering it is another. I know what I've delivered. And I also know right now, I probably cannot, based on market conditions, deliver what I've delivered in the past. I'm being real. You know what I mean?
And you're being
I'm going
honest.
in on a much higher basis. I'm not going to be able to do the same thing. But I'm going to be real choosy in the properties I go in to make sure that I get a good, solid asset where I could give you some decent returns. But everyone wants that 23% return.
And then if they don't, then the new thing now is if they don't get the return, will you give me some of the co-GP? Will you let me partake on your side? And I'm like, no, we don't need you. I have 18. I could offer a GP. Why would I do that? That defeats the purpose of everything. It's like, there's so much shit going on, and I agree 100%. We could do a round 2 podcast, just frustration, but I couldn't agree more. I mean, taking a deal full cycle is important, and taking a deal full cycle in this market, and under my own admission, I say it almost every investor meeting I go on. I say, listen, I'm not that smart. I time the market really well. What I can say is that I've learned from mistakes we made that if I made that today, I shoot myself in the foot. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice, but mistakes happen. It's life. Things go wrong. It's how fast can you get it back on track, and understanding that you've been able to get deals back on track. Maybe you didn't get a 25 and you got a 7 or a 5 or a 13, whatever it is, but we got the deal back on track, and it didn't cost us anything. There was no capital call. There was nothing bad happened. So I think that's super important, but we can leave that for another day. I know we're being conscious of time. This is awesome. It was super important. I think that people have to understand that it's not just buy a deal, wait, sell a deal for a lot of profit. I think understanding the syndicator and understanding the process that they're going to deliver is super important. Krista does that better than most. Krista, where can people find you?
They can find me at Krista, Krista at sharplineequity.com, www.sharplineequity.com. And also, if you Google on Facebook, Multifamily Apartment Investing Unveiled, you will find a Facebook group that you could join. And we talk about all the mistakes that we've made and what we've learned from them. And, we just share information on that group, and it's a good group. So you can also find us there.
Awesome. So we'll put that in the show notes. We'll get that out. It was awesome to have you. Always
you so
a
much
valued guest.
It was good seeing you guys. I haven't seen you in a while. We have to get together for real in person soon.
We do. But thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
That's about it.
Yeah. Thanks.
That's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thanks.